Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 28th through July 4th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 5 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 book. First, I finished In the Role of Brie Hutchens. This is a middle grade book about this girl named Brie who really likes acting and soap operas, and she wants to try out for this acting school that she would attend after she finishes going to the first 8 years of this Catholic school that she's always been in. One day, when she's looking up a particularly pretty soap opera star who she happens to think is really hot, she finds out that that soap opera star has a Playboy spread, and she's looking right at her boobs when her mom walks in her room. To distract her mom from the fact that she's looking at boobs and probably likes it, she lies to her mom saying that she's been picked to do this prestigious thing at the Catholic school. The problem is she hasn't been picked, nobody's been picked, so she goes on this crusade to be the person that's picked. This was right at the intersection of realizing you're queer and growing up in a religious household and what that could entail. Something I really liked about this is Brie was doing a lot of research about the different coming out scenes that had happened on soap operas in the past, and all of the chapters started with just a synopsis from an episode where something related to the chapter or just a character coming out on a soap opera was mentioned, and I really liked that aspect. I'm also a sucker for any book that has to do with theater. Because my library's version of Hoopla finally got graphic novels, I also read Motor Crush Volume 1. This futuristic comic is about a girl named Domino who races bikes both professionally and off the books, and if the professional people were ever to find out about the off the books races, that would be bad for her. She would lose her career. Unfortunately, she has to race in those other races because the prize for that is this thing called Crush. Crush is something that people use to put in their bikes and basically makes them go faster. However, for her, it's kind of like a medicine. She basically puts it in a puffer and takes very small doses of it to stay alive. Mix that with the fact that her dad owns a bike shop and her ex-girlfriend used to work on her bike and her ex-girlfriend is in with some loan sharks right now. Throw it all together and you get some very interesting stakes. This week, as part of my Fuckathon TBR, I also read The Darkness. This is a book about a 64-year-old woman who is a police officer in Iceland and is being forced into early retirement because they've already hired somebody much younger and they want her desk so this person can move in immediately, even though she has until the end of the year before she's supposed to retire. She weasels her way into trying to solve one more case and picks this cold case about this person who came over seeking asylum and ended up dead. She thinks that it could have been murder and thinks that the person that was originally investigating it just didn't do a very good job. This book was told in 3 different time frames. First, we obviously have the detective working on the case. Then we have this mother who ended up having to give her daughter away kind of to be fostered, but was allowed to still interact with the daughter from the other side of a glass window for 2 years before taking her back. And then we have this other person who is going on this trip with this man that she doesn't want to be in a relationship with, but she wants to be friendly with at least. I was able to do some quick math and figure out how that mom storyline played into the main storyline. I was only slightly wrong on the other storyline and how it would tie in, but that's mostly because we're not given all the facts at the beginning, because that's not how mysteries work. This is the first in the series and also ended in a very interesting way, so if you've read it and you have feelings about that ending, please privately message me so we can talk about it, because no spoilers in the comments. This week I watched a couple more episodes of Luke Cage. It is almost to the end of the season. I think we have 2 episodes left. And one of the things I like about the character of Luke Cage is even if he doesn't like somebody, he doesn't necessarily want that person dead, and he will actually work to keep them alive even though they are foes. We also watched a bunch more episodes of Scandal. We finished the 4th season. We're somewhere into the beginning of the 5th season. I've still definitely seen all this. Every time we get to a new plot point, I go, oh yeah, I forgot about this, and I get really excited to see it unfold again. This week, I finally got to see something that I have been very excited for the past few months, and that's the very first episode of Canada's Drag Race. You might wonder why I'm so very excited. Firstly, I'm Canadian. Secondly, one of the contestants is from where I'm from and I've worked with them doing theater stuff before. Thirdly, I just love watching Drag Race. And fourthly, this is the first time I've ever watched a season of a Drag Race show where I'm watching it as it's happening and I'm watching it as the episodes come out. Usually I have to wait for them to come to Netflix and then I watch them. But this is not the case because I have access to a Crave account and I'll be watching it every Thursday night. However, I do miss the aspect of just being able to watch the episodes, so I did also watch a couple of episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race UK. This is a pretty short season, which means I could fly through it pretty quickly, so I think I'm going to continue watching Canada on Thursdays and then watching 1 or 2 episodes of this after that, just to get more drag into my life. And then the last show I watched this week was a couple more episodes of The Walking Dead. We're still in the 9th season. So many things are happening. We're seeing flashback scenes to stuff that happened between now and basically before the time jump that we had recently, and I'm really enjoying these new types of interactions between characters. On to the movies I watched this week. For the first time I watched Princess Mononoke. It feels like we're going to probably watch at least one Studio Ghibli about every week or so. I'm very aware that people overall really like this movie, but I'm not one to really care about movies that have to do with war so much. All the strategy and the infighting and who's with who and all that type of thing just isn't my favorite thing to consume, but I enjoyed the style and the magic and all of that unfolding because this studio puts out some weird things and I like weird things, so I liked that aspect of it. Speaking of stuff that's overly to do with war and I probably wouldn't watch unless there's an aspect of it that I really do enjoy, I also watched Hamilton. I, like most musical theater kids, had heard the soundtrack before, but it's so much easier to follow certain parts of the story when you're watching people act them out instead of just hearing them in your ears. I loved the performances, I loved the stage, I loved the costumes, I loved some of the little characterizations people did. Obviously, Lin-Manuel Miranda is a brilliant lyricist, so I obviously really enjoyed the lyrics most of the time. Although there are occasional moments where I could not follow the lyrics and wish I had turned the closed captions on, but that's fine. I only recently found out that there's a lot of criticism of this, to the point where somebody actually wrote a show all about how bad Lin-Manuel Miranda is when it comes to talking about things like how the fact that Alexander Hamilton was mixed race, which, to be fair, I just assumed based on the first few lyrics of the musical. But ultimately, I'm not going to get into researching all of that conflict because, as we've discussed, I don't really care about learning about wars, and I don't really care about learning even more US history than I already know. I barely know any Canadian history. The audiobook I listened to this week was The Care and Feeding of Ravenously Hungry Girls. This is a family saga that covers this whole big family group. Let's see if I can describe this in any sort of concise way. The main family unit is 3 sisters and a brother. They didn't really grow up with their mom. Their dad was a preacher and he traveled a lot and he was kind of mean. So when the eldest sister got to 18, she moved out and married a guy named Proctor. She was then also taking over the care of her 3 siblings, but then eventually the youngest 2 siblings went back to stay with the father. That's the background on the family that you need to know. In present day, the eldest sister is still married to Proctor. She has 2 daughters, they are twins, and Althea and Proctor are currently in jail, and you find out why as the book goes on. You also find out that one of those daughters is the one that turned them in. The next eldest sister is a therapist with an eating disorder who has recently broken up with her wife of 15 years. Trigger warnings for families being homophobic, because that definitely happens in little flashbacks of this book. The youngest sister owns the house that they all grew up in. She was the only one that made it into her father's will. And then the brother took over being a preacher for their dad when he passed on. However, there's some bad history there. This book is really about the hurt and interactions between these characters and their friends. We get this book from the perspective of these 3 women, as well as some letters from Proctor to Althea in prison. The family dynamics in this book are incredibly complex. There's a lot of pain and hurt that comes up through this book. If you're looking for a book with a huge payoff at the end, this might not be it, but if you like books that really dive deep into different characters and why they do the things they do, this is one to pick up. Before I go, 10 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow, I will be interviewing the CEO of BookSloth, which is an app that you can use to track your reading. If you are on BookSloth and you haven't followed me yet, you can usually find me by typing in kathytrithardt and I should pop up. And if you have any questions about the app, please leave them down below or show up tomorrow to the live stream and ask them yourself. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. Some of you asked if there's a way to financially support me at this time, so I recently set up a Ko-fi account, which is like a digital tip. You can also send me money through PayPal, or the link to my Amazon wishlist is also down below. You can like and share this video as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!